talk about the benefits of ditching your paper binders and going digital with your data tracking. So you'll see on this page, we actually have some drop down arrows. So when you click on this, it will give you the additional content that we're going to look at today. And this is actually where our video is going to be housed that we're making right now. So the first section here is to talk about how going digital helps you to create flexibility in the kinds of tracking that you're doing. And so we'll look at some different examples of ways that you could use digital portfolios to implement different types of tracking. So maybe those kiddos who don't always see growth in academics, you can give them additional ways to track and see progress throughout the year as well. So we'll look at goal setting. We'll look at brag boards, and we'll look at student discourse and a personal goal. And so before we kind of dive into that though, the things that I really want to emphasize is that first, you want to make tracking, no matter how you're doing it, a part of your classroom culture. So make it predictable for your kids. If you're going to do a CCA, they know that the next time that they're in your class, that they're going to be tracking their progress in their binders, digitally or on paper. If you have them doing goals, then maybe every 9 weeks they know that they're going to update the progress of their goal there. But don't make it a major event. It shouldn't be something that takes up the whole class period or even 30 minutes. It's a quick check-in, they put in their progress, and then you move on from it. So one huge benefit to doing it digitally is if you're going to have them work on Canvas and you have your portfolio in Canvas, it's just a quick click over for them to be able to put in their progress and then get to work on the things that you have for them already in Canvas there. So also, try to stay consistent with it. So I know it gets hard, especially in the middle of the year and you're doing all this testing and all these things are happening, but the more you stay consistent with your tracking, the easier and the faster it will be for your kids as you're doing it throughout the year. Also, I just want to say this as a disclaimer, we're going to be looking at lots of different tracking forms and things that you could implement, but I do not in any way think that it's a good idea to do all of them at the same time at the beginning of the year and roll it all out. That is very overwhelming for you and for your kids. So we definitely want to start small and add on. Maybe right now it is only the time for academic tracking in your classroom, and that's okay. But maybe after you kind of get that rolling, then the next semester you might feel like adding in one of these other pieces that we're going to look at here. But don't overwhelm yourself trying to get it all done. So these are really just to kind of generate some ideas for you and get you brainstorming. So you can see I have some templates down here of the different types of trackers that I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier. So we covered academic tracking in the last module. So if you're still not feeling clear about that, make sure you kind of revisit and go look at that module, and we'll talk through the academic pieces. This is really going to focus on maybe those extra kinds of things that you could add in to create more buy-in with your kids or create more culture in your classroom by giving them additional spaces to see progress. So the first one here is goal tracking. And if you'll click on this, it's going to open up a template that looks like this. You'll see that there's a place for them to update their goal for each 9 weeks. Now, this is only reading and math, but you could create an additional slide for science or a personal goal or whatever you would like to do. But this is just kind of to get you started. So we know that they're already tracking their progress, so it makes sense to have them set goals as well. So this is just a quick template to get you started on that. And maybe they only check in on it every 9 weeks. It's up to you how often you would want them to kind of update that. The next area that I think is really neat is creating a brag board. So this template is a slideshow. And again, there's lots of ways to do this, but this brag board basically gives them a place to put in links or projects or pictures, things that they're really proud of that they work on throughout the year. So they just keep revisiting this slideshow and adding to it. So you can see this first slide is just kind of a cover page, but then as you kind of go through, there's slides where they put dates, and then they can insert their image, their link, their description, whatever it is that they're wanting to brag about. And it could literally just be a sentence, like, I wrote a whole sentence with a period today, whatever it is that they're proud of. And then you just continue to add slides onto this throughout the year so they can just keep going. This is really great for an open house night, or even just to put this in an email and send it to parents and be like, hey, check out what your kid's doing. So it's really a nice place for your kids to have some moments where they're proud of the progress they're making and wanting to show it to their parents or to you or peers if you feel like that's appropriate as well. The next section is this discourse tracker. So a discourse tracker to me it's basically tracking something that you're already doing throughout the year anyway. We know there's a heavy emphasis on discourse with students and that collaboration piece. So there should be growth in that throughout the year. When students are having conversations at the beginning of the year and justifying their thinking, we certainly don't want them to be at the same level of that at the end of the year. They should be able to look for better evidence and be able to justify their thoughts a little bit better. So creating a tracker and kind of putting that in one place for them to add to sporadically throughout the year gives them a way to see, man, I'm really a lot better at explaining my thoughts than I was when I first started doing this. So you may have seen something similar to this before, but this is a parking lot, and a lot of times I see these in classrooms on anchor charts. But you can take this digitally. And so I know we've done maybe these in Jamboard or other programs, but you can create this in a slide. And so basically each kid has their own assigned number in your class. And so when you have them talk with each other and they're justifying their thinking, they come here to their board and they go to their number and they write down their justification here. And so then let's say 2 weeks later, you want them to come back and you're going to have them discourse again. It may be a completely different topic, and that's okay. But you just add another slide. They go back to their number. They add in their justification, and this is giving you a really great place to be able to see where how their justification is going, how their thinking and explanation to each other is going. So love this idea, and it doesn't have to be in slides, but again, it's just one idea to kind of get you started, but giving them a predictable place to come back and do this so that you're tracking it. The next area is this my personal space. And I really like this one as well. So the my personal space template is very similar to the discourse one in that it's built-in slides, it's the boxes in rows. But instead of it being a copy that every kid in your class sees, this would be individualized. So only the student that this belongs to would see this information. And so you can see there's a space, then put the date, and you could give them different prompts. Maybe this is an emotional check-in board, or maybe this is a place for them to talk about what they did over the weekend. Notice that it doesn't have to be academic. It could be a place for them to kind of just reflect on their social and emotional well-being as well. And so this I really love because it gives them a chance to just connect with you. And that I know it's difficult to do that in those time that we have throughout the day. So another option besides a slide though, and I really like this as well, is to use Padlet. So if you've never used Padlet, it's very similar to Jamboard. It's a collaborative tool. And so you can see that there's a space for you to add different things in here and a lot more flexibility than the slide. So you could add in images, you could add in pictures, you could add in video recordings and audio recordings and GIFs. So if you wanted your kiddos to do a video reflection, this would be a really great option. So to use this though as a MySpace or kind of that social emotional piece, you'd want to make sure that on your settings for the Padlet that you would come down to the moderating and make sure that it's set onto manual where you have to approve posts before they go onto the Padlet board. And so because this is just between you and them, what you're going to see is a whole class of posts. What they're going to see is just their own post and nobody else's. As long as you never approve those posts to go onto the board officially, then it will stay kind of in that limbo of only you and them can see it. So it still gives them that privacy piece. It still gives them a place to express their feelings and thoughts. And so that's a really great thing, especially for your kiddos that may not share or they're feeling a little more shy or introverted in your classroom. So either one of these I think is a really great idea and great way to kind of implement that relationship building between you and them. I mean, it doesn't have to be academic, like I said, but it can be as well. But it's a great space for them. And I think this is one of the areas that we kind of pass over the most because we just don't have the time to focus on it. So this gives you a quick way to let them do it maybe you're doing something else during that time, and then you can check in on them. So that being said, a lot of ideas. Remember, the goal is not to do all of these. It's just to kind of get your brain thinking about what you might like to try to incorporate. So on the next drop down, you'll see that there's a couple of ideas on how to implement this. So this graphic has two different ways, suggestions that you might implement. The first is to use Canvas and create it all into a module. So you kind of make that your hub. And so you can see there's a screenshot of what this would look like. So you have your module is your portfolio, the title of your portfolio, and then in the module you have the different sections. You have your academic portfolio, your discourse portfolio, and your space. And I used text headers to kind of create that organization. Then inside of the text headers, there are the actual trackers. So you have your slideshow to track your progress, which we looked at in the previous module. You have a slideshow for your brag board, which we just looked at in the templates. And then in the discourse portfolio, we have our discourse slideshow. And then finally, your space, which is your personal portfolio space. That could be your MySpace Padlet or your slideshow that we looked at. So it just gives you a nice little way to kind of have it all laid out into one module. Now, another option though is to create it into one big slideshow with all of those components inside of the slides. So you can see here that the first slide is kind of the hub, and then each additional slide after that is your academic tracker, your personal goals, your brag board, and any other components that you want them to add into. So maybe your kiddos can't handle a whole module of Canvas, but they could do a slideshow. And so they just have their slideshow that they go to with all of those different components in it. It really is up to you and how you would prefer to have it organized and what you think your kids can handle best. Now, when we move into the next section, you'll see an example of this Canvas module as the hub. And so you'll get to kind of experience that as a student and see what that would feel like. So you'll get to actually kind of experience this version a little bit more than the slides. So we'll do that coming up here in just a few minutes. The last section here is how to create Google assignments. So regardless on how you plan on implementing this, whether it's Canvas module or one slideshow with everything, when you put it into Canvas, the only way that each kid gets their own copy of that document is by putting it as a Google assignment. So if you're not familiar with how to do this, then this little section right here is going to help walk you through how to do that. So when you're putting in this goal setting slideshow, you want each kid to have their own copy. It's going to be really important that you load it in as a Google assignment so that each kid has their own. So again, if you're not familiar, this is a great space for you. I know this is a lot of content, so if you need to, you can always come back to the beginning of this video and watch it again. And then, like I said, in the next section, we're going to be actually experiencing a digital portfolio as if you were the student. So I know, again, there's a lot here. Just kind of sift through it. I would encourage you to spend some time here and just look at these templates, rewatch the video if you need to, and then kind of think about, brainstorm, how are you going to implement this for your own classroom next year if it works for you. So otherwise, once you're ready, you can go ahead and move on to the next section.